Welcome to the Liberty Show. I'm Manuel Carlos with Ron Senkush. Hey Ron, how's it going?
Hello folks.
All right, hey, we're back. We're ready to talk about some things, but you may have noticed from some past shows that we'll bring up some topics, and by the time it gets on TV, you're saying, well, hey, didn't that come out a few months ago? Aren't they a little bit behind the times? Why is that, Ron?
Well, it takes us a while to produce a show and then deliver it to the studio and then get it into the rotation. So unfortunately, there is going to be a lag time. When we talk about a current issue, there'll be some delay until it airs.
Yeah, and while we do seem professional and we should be getting paid for this, we don't. So we have other things to do, and so we just try to fit it in between our schedules. But that's a joke, obviously. Let's talk a little bit about the purpose of the show. Why do we do this? You know, why are we doing this? With everything else we have in our lives, I mean, we have family, we have kids, jobs, all kinds of things. So why do we take the time to do this?
Manuel, we do this because we're concerned about liberty. We're concerned about the state of our country, and this is what a country that's of, for, and by the people does. Unfortunately, we'll get the kind of government that we allow. Mm-hmm. And I think we've allowed the type of government that we have. We'd like to see it change. We'd like to see less of it. We'd like to see more freedom. We'd like to see individuals free to reach their potential. And we want to show folks what's going on so that they can take a good look for themselves and maybe ultimately decide to help us out along those lines.
And I don't think there's anybody doing this locally, right?
Not that I'm aware of. I think we're the only folks doing it locally. You can find lots of stuff on the internet about libertarianism, but I think we're the only local presence on TV that talks about these topics. I'd love to have more. There's room for more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There'd be great if other people got shows out, or I mean, you can always email us at libertyshow1@gmail.com if you want to be on the show, and we'll have to talk to you first, because if you're just going to come on and try to hijack it with some other kind of agenda, we don't want that happening. I mean, you can get your own show for that. You know, the other thing we want to do too, Ron, is reach an audience that maybe these kind of ideas are new. Because, like you say, there's stuff on the internet, but the stuff you find on the internet, you have to be looking for it.
That's right.
And you search for it, and you may share it with some of your friends, but you share it with some friends that have your same kind of view. And we're kind of hoping that you're flipping through the channel here and you see some of these pre-produced videos that we air and some of the topics we talk about, and we have a different point of view. And it gets you just to thinking about it. At least you're hearing something different than what you're hearing on the local news or on the national news. And you may not agree with it, but at least you're hearing a different point of view. And maybe you are going to agree with it, and you're saying, hey, there's some other people out there that think like I do. And they're local, and I didn't know that. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was isolated. So we're hoping that we can provide some of that. And this is public access, so you're going to hear us stumble. We don't have any teleprompters. You're going to see our set here, but hey, it's public access. We're having a little fun with it too. So how are we doing on the time there, Mr. Cameraman?
3:37.
3:37. All right. Hey, we're going to cut to a break. We'll be right back. This is Manuel Carlos with a climate change update for the Liberty Show. We used to have something called global warming, but look at all this snow. It's February. It's unbelievable. Just 6 months ago, there was no snow and it was warm. And now, this. I think they realized that the phrase global warming did not fit, so now they call it climate change. Boy, were they right. They're predicting the snow will be gone in 4 months or less. Think about what I just said. 6 months ago, there was no snow. In 4 months or less, there won't be snow again. They sure are right when they say climate change is accelerating. You know what, I remember 1 year ago today, there wasn't any snow at all. Explain that, climate change deniers. They tell me this is all man-made, because when I eat beef, it causes me to fart. and fill the atmosphere with methane, which heats up the earth. Then I create something called a carbon footprint. And that's when I drive my car and heat my house. They tell me I'm just being selfish. But the government says we can stop climate change if we pay higher taxes and more for our electricity. It doesn't make sense. But if my president says it's true, it must be. I hope when we finally stop this climate change, we can stop right at sunshine and 80 degrees, because I don't like the winter. This is Manuel Carlos with a climate change update.
Well, the Institute is a fountain of knowledge about freedom in a society that is gradually losing it.
I very much believe in the Institute's mission, the promotion of freedom, the promotion of understanding of Austrian economics, and the vision, which is the vision of a free society.
I first became aware of Austrian economics through Murray Rothbard. I met Murray in 1966, and he converted me to free enterprise, anarcho-capitalism in about 10 minutes.
I had been very interested in free market economy when I was in medical school, and I had the honor and joy of meeting Ludwig von Mises.
My husband and I have been donors to the Mises Institute for a few years. I got interested in it during the financial crisis and discovered this incredible treasure trove of scholarship in an economics field that I'd never heard of before.
The Mises Institute has a vision of a genuinely free society, not one that compromises with any kind of state whatsoever.
To one degree or another, and for various reasons, even those who call themselves libertarians but are based in other institutes deviate somewhat from the sort of true north standards of Murray Rothbard. Mises doesn't deviate at all.
What we need to aim at is freedom, freedom from the state. And that's what the Mises Institute offers us that you can't get elsewhere.
Without Mises, there would be no steady flow of lovers of freedom in academia.
If we had not found this, we would not have had the aha moment of understanding what caused the financial crisis and interpreting the reaction of the policymakers to it and what that means about our future.
As far as I'm concerned, the Mises Institute is the best place on the whole planet in terms of Austrian economics and libertarian theory.
Listen, I have friends and colleagues in major libertarian institutes throughout the country. They have heard me say this, so I have no hesitation in doing so. Mises is the gold standard. So if you're looking for the standard of freedom against which other organizations ought to be measured and compared, it's Mises.
I hope you will join me in supporting the Mises Institute.
Join us. Support the Mises Institute.
Do freedom a favor. Join me in supporting the Mises Institute.
Okay, welcome back. Our next topic tonight is going to be vaccines. Right now, as we film, it's been in the forefront of the news. You've probably seen the mainstream, and you've probably read a lot about it on the internet. But we're going to bring this up. By the time this goes on air, it may not be in the news. I know it's not going to be resolved by then, but it may not be headline news. But I'm going to read from Joel Skousen's newsletter, World Affairs Brief. I subscribe to this weekly, and I always like his perspective and analysis on current topics. And he starts off, it says, several months ago, there were measles outbreak among the Amish where 383 people were infected. And as usual, nobody came even close to death. The media hardly expressed any concern to criticize the Amish except for not being vaccinated. Now comes the Disneyland infection, and suddenly it's a national security threat. The issue of mandating vaccines is being broadcast widely, almost as if we are dealing with a conspiracy of creating a crisis in order to justify squashing the anti-vaccine movement. Remember, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Never let a good crisis go to waste, exactly.
Why should measles cause or raise such a fear? Measles isn't even lethal except to a few people who already have some immune deficiencies, like the elderly and the very young. Okay. In fact, what he goes on to say is that even when he was young, he would remember they would go to somebody that was infected with measles or chickenpox. The parents would take him over to the house, to get them infected early so they would build a resistance and they wouldn't get it later. And now we've got this big fear where everybody's got to get vaccinated. Now, Ron Paul also had a good article. I don't know if you saw this, Ron. CNBC, he wrote last week. It says, "Why Vaccine Mandates Are Dangerous." And what he says is, sadly, recent panic over the outbreak of measles has led many Americans, including some self-styled libertarians, to call for giving government new powers to force children to be vaccinated. Those who are willing to make an exception to the principle that parents should make healthcare decisions for their children should ask themselves when, in history, has limited infringement on individual liberty stayed limited. By ceding the principle that individuals have the right to make their own health decisions, supporters of mandatory vaccines are opening the door to future infringements on healthcare freedom. And then he also says, by giving vaccine companies a captive market, mandates encourage these companies to use their political influence to expand the amount of vaccine mandates. And then he finishes up here. He says, giving the government the power to override parental decisions regarding vaccines will inevitably lead to further restrictions on liberties. After all, if the government can override parental or personal health care decisions, then what area of our lives is off limit to the government interference? Comments, Ron?
Yeah, the thing about this is, the thing you have to ask yourself, first and foremost, or at least I do in an issue like this, is, so if the government's going to mandate something like this, then there must be consequences for failure to comply. So, in other words, what are we as people willing to do to our neighbors if they do not agree with us that their children should be vaccinated? Right? And so are we saying that we're going to go over with pitchforks and, take force and force them to do this? Or, we're going to put them in jail, or we're going to fine them, we take their children from them? I mean, what do we have the right to do concerning our neighbors and their choices to raise their children? I also like to say, for the record, that I really don't have a position on this particular issue, a personal position. I really am not a scientist. I have no idea whether or not vaccinations can lead to bad effects. It's entirely possible that they can. I have no evidence. This isn't my area of research, and I have no idea. All I can say is that the folks that choose to do this, I don't think are putting anyone else at risk. So, in other words, it's pretty simple. If you choose to vaccinate your child and you think that's the right course of action, and you believe that the vaccines do their job, then your neighbor who doesn't vaccinate his child can't infect your child. Correct?
Well, that's why they sell these vaccines, right? It's supposed to protect you, so you should be protected from somebody that doesn't take it.
Right. If that's the case, then your neighbor's child coming down with one of these diseases that perhaps could be prevented by a vaccine shouldn't affect you, right? And so if there is no effect on you, then where do you get the authority or the power to tell them that they must comply, right? And so that's the part of this I struggle with. I just don't think that. I think it's a violation of the non-aggression principle very clearly to force your neighbor to vaccinate his child. I mean, do you have the right to talk to him about it? If he'll listen and try to persuade him, of course. And if you think that's a good idea, then you probably should do that. I really have no trouble with that. But the force part is the part that's very concerning. And like Ron Paul says, where does this go? I mean, you have to watch out for. Like Ron Paul warned, allowing this type of thing, where does it stop? I mean, it's always the slippery slope argument, and some people will say, well, we don't have to continue down the slope, and that's true. But when we take away a parent's sovereignty over their children, I mean, at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves: do we really want the government being the arbitrator or the decider of how we raise our own children and how they're treated? Are we going to open our doors 24/7 to allow our neighbors to monitor us constantly to make sure that we're in compliance with what we've decided to be proper and right? I mean, this is really a horrible violation if you start to go down the rabbit hole with this. And I really am concerned, and I think that folks on both sides of this debate, those that think vaccinations are fantastic and those that fear them, should find the common ground, basically, and say, fine, we can think each other are crazy, but at the end of the day, we're not going to use force on one another to solve this issue. I don't think there's any overriding reason why we would have to do that.
And really the issue is who owns your body.
That's right, and in particular, kind of who owns your children's body. I mean, really, they kind of own their own, but the way I've always seen it is until they reach adulthood, their parents are charged with, the responsibility of taking care of them. And I think that when we turn that over to the government, that doesn't end well. I don't believe that ends well.
I don't think it ever has in history, has it?
No.
There's I wanted to bring this up too. This goes along with this. Ben Carson, some of you may be familiar with him. He is the doctor that was at the prayer breakfast. I think it was a prayer breakfast with Obama, and he spoke out against Obamacare, and the president was sitting right there, and all of a sudden he became a celebrity for that, for standing up to the president. And he and I got this again from Jill Skousen's newsletter, but he's for this forced vaccination, and he puts it right up there with seatbelts. He says, well, you don't have a right to drive without a seatbelt. And the funny thing is I was at the post office the other day, and I saw a car there that had a Libertarian sticker on it. It says Live Free. It was actually a Libertarian Party sticker, and above that was a Ben Carson. And I thought, oh, maybe they don't know Ben Carson's views on some of the stuff. Maybe they do. But I don't think he is a libertarian. I mean, he's for forced vaccinations. You don't have a right not to wear a seatbelt. And there's a whole host of other things that could go with that, too, if you don't have a right to do some simple things like that. I don't think he's a libertarian.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he's a fan of gun control as well. I believe I've heard him speak on that. I could be wrong. But in any case, what you see happening sometimes now in the media and various other places are that they're struggling with labels and how to label some of the folks these days, because through most of our history, or most recent history anyway, the last several decades, there's been this right-left paradigm for politics, and everybody kind of cookie cutter fits into one side or the other, basically based on what you're more passionate about, probably. It has been the way it's worked out. And so we're starting to see that people are deviating from these two cookie cutter molds in various ways. And so it used to be that we would easily pigeonhole somebody into one of those two camps, right? And so now what you see is people taking various positions, and then us struggling on what to call them. Not I wouldn't say us struggling, but the media, people in general struggling with what to call them. And so I think that people have thrown out the word libertarian sometimes when it probably only covers some small aspect of what that person stands for. I think Ben Carson speaks about smaller government in general, and being fiscally conservative, and spending less money and less intrusive. Well, the thing is, it's hard to call that kind of person a conservative anymore. It's hard. Yeah. It's certainly hard to call them a Republican, because they don't appear to be anywhere around other than Ron Paul. It's really tough to find some other examples of that. And there's a few scattered in there, but boy, they're certainly outnumbered. And the Republicans have been spending money and have not been small government people for quite some time. So when someone comes along like this, we struggle on what to call them. And I think we've sort of mislabeled Ben in this category. I don't think Ben Dr. Carson has ever referred to himself as a libertarian, as far as I've ever known.
Yeah, I think other people are referring to him as that. Yeah, I would like to bring up something, since we brought up Ron Paul, because we are representing the Libertarian Party, or here we're trying to promote the Libertarian Party that as another option out there, and we talk about these principles. And Ron Paul actually ran as a Libertarian candidate back in the 80s, and then he went back to the Republican Party because he felt that was a way that he could work inside the system and get the message out. So I don't think he ever sold out like some of these other people that claim to be libertarians. I think he's pretty much true blue on that. Although I don't know if true blue is the right thing because aren't Democrats blue, but I think he's pretty much stuck to the gun. But reminded me, we were just talking before we started filming that Gary Johnson was talking about running again for the Libertarian, as a Libertarian presidential candidate. And he is suing, and you've probably seen the commercial as you've watched the show before, that he's suing the Presidential Debate Commission because they can only let two parties in there now because Democrats and Republicans own them. But it's our belief now with the way things are going that I think enough people are fed up that, yeah, you can actually be a libertarian in the Libertarian Party. I don't think you really need to try to go to another party and be an undercover operative. I don't know if that's the right way to say that or really what people are doing, but I think now we're ready, aren't we?
Yeah. Plus, you're not really wanted in either of the other two camps
you're not.
if you have these ideas. I mean, they may want your vote at the end of the day, but they certainly don't want your ideas, and they certainly don't want to listen to anything that you have to say or any liberty policy. So, I mean, for me, on a personal level, I can't work within their framework because it's almost like violating the non-aggression principle. I mean, as much as I don't really agree with them, I do agree that they have the right to form a party and seek any policies or government that they want. I don't feel right going into them and working against them, from the inside. I mean, personally, that's something I can't do. So if you have that conflict as well, I think you have a home here. Anyway, I just think that everyone has to make that decision for themselves, ultimately. And I'm not going to condemn people who choose to do it. I mean, at least they're doing something, and there's so little of that going on, unfortunately, these days, that I'm actually encouraged to see somebody doing something, even if I don't agree with the exact set of tactics that they're using. They're trying very hard and using what they perceive as the right avenue to do it. I just think that most of them are going to eventually realize that it's futile there, and when they do, we're here and ready with open arms.
The other thing I saw with Gary Johnson, when he announced that he would like to run again, and there's some laws that he can't say that he's definitely going to run again until he's ready to go, but he was on Neil Cavuto, and they were talking about opening up the debates, and he's suing the Presidential Debate Commission. And Neil Cavuto brought up that in Italy, there was 12 people running for president or whatever that title is there, and there's 80%, they had an 80% turnout in voting turnout compared to what do we have in this country?
Less than 50 on average, a lot less than 50 sometimes.
So maybe if we had some other people running a different party like the Libertarians, we might have some people come out and say, well, hey, I think I can make a difference now. My vote's going to make a difference. But I think a lot of people get discouraged under that two-party system.
Typically more than half. I think we're about out of time here, Manuel.
Yeah, we're going to take a break and we'll be back.
Thanks.
back. We're going to wrap up here. We're about at the end of the show, but Ron wanted to talk about some things that you can do.
Yeah, actually, the reason that we have this show, obviously, is we want to live in a freer society. We want government reined in and defending your liberty instead of taking it away. We think that's its legitimate function. And so we want to also remind you that we still have the means to do this in a peaceful way. We still have elections. We still have the ability to put on a show like this, to speak our mind, to speak freely. And, those things may leave us at some point in time and then leave these options off the table. Mm-hmm. So we are advocating for a peaceful means to this. It's still very simple. If enough of us go to the voting booth and pull the different lever, we can enact change, and there doesn't have to be any bloodshed. There doesn't have to be any violence. We still have the opportunity to do that here. Think about all the times through history that people lost that and had to go into other means in order to enact change. It's a use it or lose it proposition.
That's right, and there's different ways that you could do that. Like Ron says, use it or lose it. Maybe you want your own access show. Maybe you just need to go out and vote, and maybe you haven't voted. Maybe you need to share the information with your friends. If you're so inclined, you could even donate to the Libertarian Party if you want to. You could go to lpin.org. We need to raise money because Ron is the star of the show, and we get Skittles, and this is demand. You don't see this. This goes on before the show. We have to remove all the yellow ones. We've got to pay somebody to do that. And there's payroll taxes, Social Security taxes for that. Then he gets these the little weenies with the bacon wrapped around them, and we got to prepare that. That costs money. Meat prices are going up. But all seriousness,
we're actually going there, aren't we? Okay. I wanted that to be my secret. Now Manuel has let that out, and now you all know about my demands to do the Liberty Show.
These are his demands. Liberty's not free.
No, it's inexpensive and delicious at times, but it's not free.
It is not free. There's no free lunch. But why don't you email us? You can email us at libertyshow1@gmail.com. You can visit, we have a local website here for the St. Joe County Libertarians, and that's lpsj.org. You can learn about local meetings, and what else do we have on there?
We have a Facebook presence, I can tell you that.
We have a Facebook presence, right.
So you can find us under Northern Indiana Libertarians or St. Joe County Libertarians, I believe are two different groups that we have. And of course, there's the lpin.org website, which I believe you already mentioned. And we have information on those sites about our meetings, and they're open to the public. You're more than welcome to come. We'd love to have you. Bring a friend, and lots of ways to get involved. So keep that in mind. And
I think
we hope to join you.
Yeah, I think I was just suspended from the next show. You'll probably see anti-oligarchy because I brought up Ron's demands. He's a mean boss, let me tell you.
I don't violate the non-aggression principle. I can tell you that.
Publicly.
Or privately.
Okay. All right, until next week, I'm Manuel Carlos with Ron Senkush, and this was The Liberty Show.